Welcome back to Bread and Butter, where we're serving up the basics for Hearthstone Improvement. This is episode 147, and I finally have the soundboard working inside Riverside. I'm very excited. I'm joined, as always, by Pylet. Pylet, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And today we have a special returning guest, NoHandsGamer. NoHandsGamer, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I am fantastic. We have you here to talk about the book, but before we get to that, what have you been doing inside of Hearthstone?
I feel like this expansion, it has a lot of decks with like new flavor. So I got #1 legend 2 months in a row with Quest Warrior, and that 1 mana armor card is just really, really good. And it's just kind of what the control warrior needed. So now you're just gaining 20 more armor pretty easily per game. And then it has other tools that synergize it. Things like your 5 mana, I can't remember his name, all forms of life. Planetary decimation, like stuff like that. There's a lot of just natural synergy, and a lot of so I'm just liking the new modifications. I've in the past actually thought the third expansion of the year should be not be deleting decks, but adding more on. So this is kind of where I think some of the negativity comes from the previous expansion where people felt a little let down, rightfully so. But I've been enjoying a lot, and it's an easy stream every day because it's fun and there's tons of decks, and there's a new bait deck that someone's got #1 legend with every day, so something new to try out. It doesn't feel like even doesn't feel like, oh, there's 3 decks that are only 3 decks you can play. So
Yeah, that's fantastic. Pylet, what about yourself?
I haven't played a ton in the past week just because of Thanksgiving. Just wasn't home much a couple days to play. But when I have been playing enough Hunter and Shaman just to stay sharp on it for THL, and then still kind of looking around for what those other decks are going to be, depending on what I think I'm going to face. Did play around a little bit more with like the Bubble Paladin that Tito, I don't remember if we had talked about it on the podcast, but I know we talked about it on your stream. Played a little bit more with the Dragon Mage. The Arcane Mage didn't have as much success, but wasn't drawing as well and wasn't running into the matchups I wanted to see. So kind of put that aside for where I was at in ladder. So just kind of chilling in that sense. Did win my THL match. Had a very, very close match against Elbom, where we went at 1-3-2 with one of the games being a tie. We tied in an aggro DH mirror.
Ooh.
Where I was so far behind for so long, and I clawed my way back and said, if they haven't killed me yet, they don't have it in hand. So I just have to stay alive. I was 1 damage short, I want to say 2 turns in a row, and then got to the point to where they put me below 4. I was able to put them below 4 and just play acupuncture and take the win and loss for both per THL rules. So I'm like, I'll take it. I got the deck out of the way. It was a deck I was scared of getting through. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about my THL week for sure. That's how well it went. I've been playing the Bubble Paladin, and I started tinkering with Bubble Paladin because we have the Aura Paladin, and that's fine, and we have it's a fun deck. But I also wanted to start playing around with fancy packaging and whatnot because that's this card that has seen a lot of play, and so I've tried to build a deck. And I felt like I've come up with a couple things, and we eventually came to like a drunk paladin list, but not like the drunk paladin that you're seeing, like our own version. And it's been really great because I've actually had people messaging me, but like, did you come up with the Bubble Paladin? I'm like, well, kinda. And but I don't know if, like, I'm sure other people are experimenting too, so it's hard to tell. But it's nice that people are like seeing me on HS Guru and being like, I found this list. This was you. Like, is this yours? I'm like, well, yes. It was, and the fun part about it is, yeah, it's the Tank Engineer, and you think Tank Engineer is probably a card that's too slow in a deck like that, but what you do is you drop it, and you can play it on turn. You coin it on 3 or play it on 4, and they don't want to pop it because they don't want that big 7/7. So in a deck like this, I'm playing Story of Galvadon, and I'm playing fancy packaging on it. I'm playing, I'm buffing it. I'm using the location. So they don't want to. They leave it there because they don't want to mess with it because they figure, oh, it's a 2-1, and then you just buff it up, so it becomes a problem for them. And like, okay, I do have to deal with this, and then it becomes a 7-7. So you play enough spells and you get your pirates down. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm really enjoying that. Um, and outside of that, I really like the event they had this week where you get some cosmetics that you didn't have before. A couple opportunities for that. I think they do. I think it was a success. Everyone's kind of happy that they're getting some stuff they didn't have. And if you already have everything, apparently you get golden packs. So that was pretty nice. But no hands. What have you been doing outside the book? You've been pretty bored, not doing much interesting.
I'm doing interesting things. So it's winter, so I've been kind of like finishing this up, the book up, and that's been like the big last stress. I had a bunch of stuff, in the summer and like October that I was working on and doing a lot of activities because it's warm out. But and then but yeah, it's the book's been a lot of just like been working on a year and a half, and you're just finishing this, a lot of stress. So kind of now I'm right in time for it to be cold, have just all this free time available. Realistically, I stream probably like 45 hours a week, and then you still got another 70 hours to fill up of your life. So it'll be nice to just relax for a while. So
Fantastic. How about yourself, Pilot? What have you been up to?
Yeah, kind of hung out with family for Thanksgiving and played some board games. My brother and I are both into board games, but we live too far away from each other to play regularly. So Thanksgiving is when we subject everyone else to whatever board games we feel like playing. So got in a couple games there. Not as many as normal, just because we didn't play on Thanksgiving, but we always get together for leftovers the day after. So played a couple of party style games, played a game of Everdell, and enjoyed time with family. Been hitting my groove again with bowling. I bowled last Tuesday. I bowled my best ever game. I threw a 290 with the one non-strike being in the first frame, and then 8 of the 11 after that being complete luck because I didn't like any of my shots, but they worked and I wasn't going to question it. And then came back down to earth the last 2 games, but bowled pretty well tonight through a 660 series. All the games were in the 200s, so getting my form back there, getting out of my head after being in my head with the slump the month that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And then
290 is an insanely good score, right?
Yes.
Like that's like your pro level then, right? Like, I don't know, 300 is as good as you can get, right? So
correct. So I would not call myself pro level yet, but my goal is to end one of my leagues averaging a 200 this year. I'm sitting at 190s for all 3. So just trying to steady things out.
Well, with the 290, you must have finally broke your 700, right? You finally got a 700 series?
No, I threw it away. I threw the whole thing away after that. So I came crashing back down, which is why I was happy tonight to throw consistent and steady. I had 2 open frames. One was a bad miss. One was a split. That was hard to pick up. So I'm like, I'll take that. That's fine.
When you actually when you have a game like that, especially if it's in the first game, it's really hard to continue to bowl well because you just get so much adrenaline when you're like trying to get like you're like 9 strikes, 10 strikes, you're like amped up, and then that game's over, and then it kind of like drains out, and then it's hard to maintain afterwards. And guy, I've been there. It's crazy. I can't wait. I really want to start bowling again. I think I'm hopefully going to start up in the winter or the fall, maybe even summer league. I don't know, but
especially for me when it was the first game and knowing that most of those strikes shouldn't have been strikes. So I knew, okay, game 2, I've used up all my luck for the night. Now I need to bowl physically well because I'm not going to get away with it, and I just could never find anything. But outside of that I did finally jump in to hearing a bunch of people recommend it and multiple discords. I finally started Expedition 33. It's on my list to start, and I kept hearing people talk about it. I saw it was nominated for like 7 awards for Game of the Year awards. I'm like, okay, I'm going to bump this up my list, and that's a very, very good game.
I played a lot of Hearthstone, but outside of that, I was like, we were supposed to have Thanksgiving on Thanksgiving this year, but my wife was sick, so we bumped it to Saturday, and so that became a lot of Civilization 7 for me. And normally I play on Friday nights, but I really took the time and I was watching videos and I was trying to get good. I don't know what inspired me, but I was trying to get good. And
Yeah.
and so I was like kind of trying to figure out like, hey, what's a good start? Why do I do towns? When do I make it a city? How do I have good 51st turns and really trying to learn there. So I spent a lot of time playing a game until like, the first 100 turns, and then things started to turn, but I'm learning things, so I had to restart the seed and try it again. And we didn't end up winning. We played like 2 games. We didn't end up winning, but we came really close and we're playing at a higher level. And I was really happy with what I've learned. And I feel like going forward, I'm just going to keep, building up on that knowledge. So now normally we go into talking about the news, but we're gonna intentionally go out today because I think we're very excited to talk about this book that No Hands Gamer wrote. So No Hands Gamer, you wrote a book. What's it called and what's it about?
Yeah, so it's I have a proof of it, the full copy, The Art of Getting Good, and the book sort of came. So if you about 4 years ago, I made a video on tempo. Most probably one of the most important concepts of Hearthstone is understanding tempo, and I made it. And I was thinking, well, I'll eventually make one on value, right? Because everyone talks about tempo and value. And I was also at the same time teaching one of my students about value. And I realized like value was much more complicated than sort of the view of what Hearthstone players say. It's just a bunch of stuff in your hand. But I makes me curious to say, like, what do you guys think value is in Hearthstone specifically? How would you describe it yourself? And, if you've read the book, you can have some of this, but what would you say?
Good Pilot.
Before I read the book, I mainly thought of value as resources, just because that's the way that it's used a lot when you're talking about Hearthstone and multiple spaces. You think value as resources, kind of like initiative is putting stuff on the board and putting on pressure and using those resources. Value is gaining more or holding them, but definitely did not think about it in the way that you talked about it in the book, and we'll get more into that later.
Yeah, but
for me,
so go ahead. Yeah,
I'm sorry. For me, it's kind of like using the whole buffalo, like getting the battle cry, trading something where your guy still lives, and also maybe getting the face damage in and whatnot. It's like to maximize value is to get everything you can out of a card and not waste it.
Yep. And I think here's what's interesting about the concept of maximizing value is if you're maximizing value, you're often neglecting the most important resources of the game, which is tempo, which is the turn time, your mana, the amount of hits you can face. You can only attack once per face unless it's a Wind Fury minion, right? You can weapon hit, and tempo is a resource, right? So I think people, when we say value, maybe we say resources exclusion of tempo. So getting, and I used to think of like, so you ever remember what's the peasant card, right? 2/1 draws you a card. If you play that on turn 1 and it doesn't go answered for 5 turns, that 1 mana card did 10 damage and drew you 5 cards, right? That is like the power of tempo. Now that's stronger than like Ultimate Infestation, right? It deals 5 damage, draws you 5 cards, costs 10 mana, right? So we think Ultimate Infestation high value, Peasant low value, but Peasant on turn 10 is really, really bad. But on turn 1, it's an incredibly high value card. So that's kind of the way. So a lot of the book started off with this idea. I was thinking about value, and then I was thinking about teaching value to my students, and then it kind of said like, well, what if I just started writing a whole book on these concepts? And then it kind of expanded into this whole thing of like, how do you get good, and how do you, not just understand these concepts, but how do you get them into your brain so you know how to use them without just jamming things in. What is the process for going about that? What is my process? How do I teach my students? How do I teach myself? So that's kind of where the book came from.
One of the things that I learned when I made it when I as you play and you get better, you make jumps, right? You go from a plateau and you start right. One
Yep.
of the things that I learned when I made a jump was to play a card, even if you don't get full value out of it, where it's just like, hey,
Yep.
you want to play the 3/4 that does the battle cry, that does the thing, but sometimes you just gotta ignore the battle cry if it's not going to be effective because hey, a 3/4 when they have nothing is tempo, and then now that's something, and it's better than just holding it because your cards in your hand don't do anything when you're dead.
Yep.
Play them, get them out there, and that was like such a huge lesson I learned. So for this book, who'd you say your target audience is?
To be honest, like everyone asks this question, and realistically, my audience is Hearthstone players. But I think like the real audience is kind of the person that wants to be better at what they're doing, and for some reason doesn't get better. And it's kind of really me in sixth grade, right? In sixth grade, I was friends with these two guys that had perfect pitch, and they were great piano players and they could just improvise. And I couldn't really improvise. And I learned some stuff from them, but I kind of would get stuck. And then on top of that, my friends got better. I was really good at tennis. And then my friends, they're taking privates, but they were playing more in their this, and all of a sudden they're better at tennis than me. And I was still really good at chess. But then even I got to high school in chess and I was no longer the best player. I was the second best player in middle school. Me and my best friend were 1 and 2. And then I got to high school and I was no longer as good. And I think the book is really targeted on like young me because I would play these things a lot. Like I wasn't not putting in the time. And I think people think of like, oh, you're not putting in the time. That's usually the default answer, but it's so much more than that. And, even things like quality time, like if you play Hearthstone and you play for 2 hours every day and you're focused and you're paying attention versus you play for 4 hours and you're like watching Netflix and you got a beer and you're, texting, like that might be worse than just the 2 hours of focused time. And so stuff like that.
That's fair, and it changes, right? We've talked about this just recently. It's like sometimes you're there trying to um, do one thing, and sometimes you're just there to relax,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to evaluate each session. What do you want out of that session? And if you're there just to like, hey, I want to watch a movie and play Hearthstone, fine, but be prepared to maybe not win as much or not learn
Yep.
as much or whatever. So, it's understand having those expectations, understanding what you're trying to do. Um, but so you were just talking about tennis and chess and whatnot, but throughout the book, you pull on all these experiences from your
Yep.
past and you revolve them. I would say the prime three were Hearthstone, poker, and dancing. So the poker and Hearthstone are obvious, but dancing?
Yeah, so it's I've been real into it the last 4 years, and I did it in college. And I was with my chronic pain. I thought I'd never be able to dance again, um, and I got back into it about 4 years ago, and it's going real well. And I'm winning some competitions, losing some competitions. I'm an amateur. I'm kind of like in this phase of like I'm kind of like the equivalent of right now of like the meme streamer who's like plays in top 200 sometimes but isn't quite at the level of the real pros but is making fun decks. And that's kind of where I am with dancing. I'm not the when you compare me to the actual pros, I'm not good. But when you compare me to the amateurs, I crush. But you're not. It's a cooperative thing, So it's not a competition most of the time. So that's kind of I've been really into that for the last 4 years, and been yeah.
I loved it too because like I used to teach ballroom dancing. I,
Hmm.
I I took it in college, and it was at the time when Big Bad Voodoo Daddy Swing was
Yeah.
great, and I was teaching classes at Smith and Mount Holyoke, and it was just a ton of fun. We were going to clubs at night doing like the aerial stuff, like I had a dance partner. We were flipping each other over
Yep.
and stuff like that. It was amazing. I wish I still did that. I really do. It was so much fun. Um, so you broke your book down in basically 6 sections. You
Yep.
have objectives, failures, reflection, study, practice, and performance. How did you narrow it down to what you thought were the 6 key areas? And were there other topics that you had that you kind of just dropped because they didn't really fit?
Yeah, I mean, so this is kind of really the whole situation. So there's some things I could go more in detail of. I thought about, the book is really so concept on gives more of a objective based art form, but I delve into the subjective based art form. So an objective based art form in Hearthstone, the goal is put your opponent's life down to 0. Now, you might have a more complicated subjective goal, but if you're wanting to get good, you want to do what I call assume an objective. So that's in the first chapter where you say, my goal is to effectively put my opponent's life down to 0 as effectively as possible. All right, like whatever to win as highest percentage as possible. So that's how you judge your actions. You think, did this help me or did this not help me put my opponent's life down to 0? What's hard if you have like, oh, I want to have fun, that makes it harder to evaluate your actions. Now you can do that too, but I thought about talking more about subjective based art forms, but I didn't. That was almost so complicated that I could be another book. So really, the big concept of this this is what you're trying to do: put your opponent's life down to 0, and you assume an objective, and it's something like dance or like weightlifting. I give weightlifting as an example because it's very simple. It might be like, okay, I want to maybe lose 15 pounds and be able to increase my weight list by a certain amount. Those having those clear paths of win conditions make it very much easier to evaluate your actions and get feedback. So where if you're just doing something like art, was that a good painting or is it not? That's a very complicated question. So I didn't really go into that, but I think this is the whole process. And I was going in and saying, okay, what are the things you really need to know? And I think what are the principles of learning something? And I think it's objectives, which is the groundwork where I'm talking about values and the overall framework. Failures, you're not going to succeed, right? If you were succeeding right from the get-go, you wouldn't need the book. Like you're just batting 100 right from the get-go. You're going to fail. And then reflection is I think about how I failed, and what am I going to do? Study is kind of the cheat code. Study and practice are actually really easy in Hearthstone. And study is, I'm going to go look at what other people are doing. And it's so easy in Hearthstone right now. Practice is, I'm going to go put it into practice. Also easy, mainly because of the MMR. And then I have the performance, which is more mentalities around this. So performance is probably a chapter that could have been cut. It's more my opinions on how to do peak performance. But probably the first 5 were the most important. And that's kind of like where when I was thinking about what do you really need? What are all the habits you need to have to be good? You really need those 5. So yeah.
Yeah, and I understand that because, like, objective, what do I want to do? I want to win at Hearthstone. Objective, I want to win at Hearthstone playing with Rycleaver. Failure, I'm trying to play with Rycleaver. Why am I failing? Reflection, Rycleaver is not a good card, yet I'm still trying to play with it. So apparently, my objectives are not there. So yeah, I completely understand that. It's how you evaluate what you do. My objective there was to win with the Rycleaver.
Yeah.
Okay,
There are pro players
tough
who
to do.
find ways to win with cards like Rycleaver. The big disadvantage you have is nobody else is trying that, right? So you're really in the frontier where if somebody else was already doing Rycleaver, you could go watch their videos. You're like, oh, that's what I need to do, But yeah, so
But I can turn that into a different objective, which is how do I increase my viewership? Is I can try pioneering Rycleaver decks, and then there. So yeah, that's kind of really what you were talking about. It's like how do you define your objectives? And
yes.
at least as far as I understood it.
And
I read
I
it.
talked about in the book of like nowadays I used to be, win at the highest rate possible or win a big tournament. And now my personal Hearthstone objectives are more around streaming. But I, talked about the trade-off of, well, if I'm winning, that's good for the viewership, right? But if I win at all costs, then I'm going to be too serious and I'm not going to be as fun. So that's kind of the more subjective element, why things get complicated in the real world, but why it can be really useful to assume like, okay, today I'm just trying to win as much as possible, or today I'm trying to do the craziest meme plays, stuff like that.
And we've talked about this before, but that's the same kind of thing I run into as a very small streamer, is that I'm trying to grow. Smaller number, legend number means
Mhm.
probably more people come to view, but also I also want to play the weird decks. I also want to do things strange. So I have um
Yep.
conflicting objectives, and that's okay as long as I understand why they conflict and then what my goals are and how do I try to merge them. And the more I get better
Mhm.
at the deck, the more I get better at the game and understanding how to make the bad decks work because I am a better understanding the value and the trade, whatever, then I can kind of bring that up. But initially it's just they conflict, they crash to each
Yep.
other. It's like I'm not going to get better playing some of these decks that I play, especially the ones that Pilot gives me.
Yeah. I
Um,
think also to mention for view content creation purposes, bad decks tend to be better for YouTube, like short clips, internet memes, and they tend to be worse for Twitch. So that's the thing you got to be thinking about of like, okay, how do I take these bad decks and make, am I going to edit them and make some sweet clips? That's kind of what you need around that because you don't have those instant numbers where somebody can come and say, oh, they're rank 80. They know I can immediately make a snap judgment on them, right? So that's kind of the trade-off. What usually people do, if you look at like Dane Hearth, he's doing these ridiculous things, but he's built that reputation not around his skill, even though he's a good player, but around the crazy things he does. So
And I found that too because I've been like, the shorts are great. I take like stupid things that happen with shorts, put it out there, it does pretty well. But then I make a deck video, a longer form video about like one of these decks, and it doesn't really do as well. So yeah,
Mhm.
it's all figuring out what your objectives are and how you reach them and whatnot.
Mhm.
So some people might think this is a Hearthstone book, given what they know about you, who you are. Is it a Hearthstone book?
I mean, it's really a generalized, like, how do you approach getting good at anything? And I give about 15% of the examples are from Hearthstone. So it certainly helps, but 85% are not. I got a baseball analogy right at the beginning, so I have poker analogies. I have lots of different, so it's really more the high level framework. So about how to get good at things. So, in the end of the book, I have end material where I give examples of the process for Hearthstone and for a few other things. But really, it's more an overall. I feel you could take this and go play League of Legends. You could go try be a dancer. You could go try be a bowler. Even just you're telling me what's really interesting. You were saying about, oh, I got a 290, but I didn't feel like my shots were good. And the beginner bowler just sees I got a strike. I must have played perfectly.
Yep.
That's what I thought. And then
Yep.
you're even saying, oh, that's just like some poker. You probably did a bad technique and something with physics. You high rolled,
Oh yeah.
and you understand bowling well enough to know, oh, I know I didn't do my best there, even though I got the result. And I wonder if there's the equivalent of, oh, I did a great shot and something with physics screwed me over. Does that
Yep.
happen as well?
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, like you'll throw a ball and like you ideally you want to hit the ball between, especially if you throw like with a hook, you want to come in between the 1 and 2 pin. But sometimes you throw it and it goes and hits the 1 and 3 pin, so it goes over the head pin and hits the other two. And if you get a strike there, that's like a backdoor strike. And it's a whatever. And then sometimes like you throw a perfect ball and you leave the 5 pin. It's like, how did that
So,
happen?
I
yeah,
forgot
I
So
you were
feel
a
you've
lefty
already.
for a second there, Tito. I'm like, what
Yeah.
are you talking about? I'm like, oh yeah, you're a lefty.
Yeah. You guys are speaking a language that I don't understand.
Hmm.
That you've broken this down, bowling down into these individual values, just like we do in Hearthstone, and we're going to talk about that later. But you break it down into values, and especially important these values. one that well, we could talk about mini objectives, but that are easier to get feedback on, that are easier to evaluate. I did this well, or I did this well, or this value seemed to come in conflict with that value. Because if you're just, say, did I get a strike or did not? Like you said, you did something wrong, but you still got the strike, right? But if I were bowling, I'd just be like, I must have done it perfectly, right? No room for improvement, literally perfect, right? So I think that's that's me. I think a lot of players bring that to Hearthstone, right? I won, therefore, and I guess in Hearthstone we have the more that I got lucky defense, which we can talk about later. But this concept is really for everything, and I think the part of the value of the high level of getting good at something, like what are you wasting your time playing video games, right? But you get really, really good at a video game, and then all of a sudden that skill is you've learned the process and you're better in your next thing, right? And I think that's part of the power is you have this training ground to really master a first thing that you can do at home. You can do without, with an injury. I had health problems, so you can do it despite having limitations. And I think that's really cool. And then you can take that skill there and then say, well, if this, then that, I can apply the same skills and mindsets I learned to do this at an elite level to the next thing. And I think that's part of why we're attracted as human beings to games is this kind of, it's more complicated than that, but that's one of the reasons I think why we're attracted to human games as human beings. So.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that winning with the deck right off the bat is almost bad because it's like you win like 3 out of your first 4 games or 5 out of your 6, and you're like, oh, I get this. This makes sense, and you start winning. And you may not understand the deck. You just happen to kind of roll with it, and then you have this false sense of confidence, and then all of a sudden you're like 7-15. You're like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
But like because you believed in you got that early belief and like I know what I'm doing, and then you really didn't.
Yep.
You gonna say something, Pylet?
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what you said, as a music teacher and a band director, I was thinking the same thing the entire time I was reading it, thinking about, oh, these are all lessons that I'm teaching my students and talking to them about. It definitely goes way past Hearthstone and way past the specific examples that you are giving, but those examples are valuable because it's something that you can relate to and that process, and then people are able to see that process and then take it into whatever they're doing.
Yeah, I took a good amount of music because I spent, before I got my hand injuries, I did a huge amount of music, and it was really kind of sad to lose it. It's another thing I lost. People think I lost video games, but I lost. But I shit on a lot of the classical art, so I shit on classical piano because I didn't like it, and I would just do it, and I never got really good at it. Yeah. And I also shit on the kind of like ballroom dancing. You're talking about ballroom. Because it's kind of that same mentality of like, this is the perfect way to do it. And nowadays I like all the off meta, the imperfect, the one where there's not a right answer. I like that stuff more than, this is the way we've decided is perfect. So that's kind of where I'm at. But I think some of the arts is opposite of Hearthstone, where Hearthstone is like, I want to win. The goal is to win, where I kind of like these other things where there is no goal. There is no win condition, but there kind of is, but that's a topic for another. But but there's not this easy to evaluate. This is what the right answer is. So yeah.
Yep.
And that's one thing I hate about the high legend players. No offense, but it's like you guys, a lot of you just okay, these are the 3 decks, three best decks, so these are the 3 decks I have to play, and I completely get it because they are the 3 best statistical decks, and you want to get as a best finish as you can. But it's just like I want to see more. I would love to see more people be like, okay, these are the 3 best decks. How do I find the deck that does well against 2 out of the 3 of them and kind of expand? I feel like you guys have the power to expand that meta, but people just get so locked in on the statistical things that are on HS Guru and whatnot that there's not a lot of imagination in the top 200. Not saying that's completely accurate, but I mean, a lot of times you end up just seeing those 3 decks, and it's.
I disagree of where things. So maybe I don't disagree. I'll add some complexity. Often in the new meta, these are the decks, and things have moved really fast. There's nerfs all the time, And then I wasn't doing well with Quest Warrior, and then one day I just queue it up and I crush with it. And I give it number one, and now everyone's playing it, right? So, and then even some things like Chansu, I was playing Quest Hunter, got number one, and now Quest Hunter is this. So people are trying things. I think, but it doesn't go instantaneously. Like metas might, 2 weeks into a meta, a new rogue deck might emerge. So it's the people that, if you're a competitive player though, right now in the competitive scene, you need finishes. You don't. It's very risky to just be trying stuff out. And there's not much of a payoff. You're better off playing decks that are well established and getting good at them. So they have an incentive where I, as a content creator, have a higher incentive to play something like little compromise between those. I'm not the full meme streamer, but a lot of the decks I do well with are 49% win rate decks. They're not the high tier stuff. So I think it's a little more complicated than that. But at the end of the day, like anyone can play whatever deck they want in top 100. But if they lose all their rank, then they're no longer in top 100, right? So it's kind of this survivorship bias where if all the people in top 100 think you have to play the best decks, that means that the people who didn't believe that lost top 100, right? So that's kind of the situation you're in there.
You can see some of these other decks on his other channel, NoHandsGamer, Funky Monkey kind of combo. So we've talked around this a little bit, but while the book is called about getting good, right? What's the exact title?
The Art of Getting Good.
The Art of Getting Good. It's not about necessarily just trying to be the number one Hearthstone player. It's about succeeding at what you're doing and how you define what you're doing that you're succeeding at. For example, like you said, you are not trying to be the best Hearthstone player in the world right now, but you're trying to be the best streamer you can be. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so it's kind of how you evaluate your goals. So just in general, what is streaming going to be? I need to conserve sort of energy. A lot of things are about actually playing decks that aren't as mentally demanding, because then I can talk to chat and go longer. So you're better off playing part of the reason I play control decks is that control decks, I think, in maybe a whole game, they might be as demanding, but it might be over 30 minutes instead of 10 minutes. You might have one or two key decisions per turn, where if you're playing Rogue, you often might have 10 decisions per turn, and you really have to be engaged, which is fine, especially if you're just playing by yourself, right? And you're, a 17-year-old and you're cracked out, you got a monster in your hand, and you've got so much energy. You want to play these decks. If you're Maxi, he's playing decks that he's playing 40 cards in a turn. I can't do that, right? I get exhausted. But I am often looking to play a deck that is a little slower. I'm older, right? I'm not 17. So now I can still do I got number one just 10 days ago, but I will get exhausted if I'm trying to play these high intensity decks all the time. So those are the kind of trade-offs that you have to be thinking about as a streamer, that you don't have to be thinking about as just someone trying to be a player.
So you get some feedback from people that we might know, like Fury Hunter, Monsanto. How did their feedback help shape the direction of the book?
Yeah, so I was talking to them, and I think so some of their mindsets. Monsanto, interestingly enough, is going to becoming a pro poker player now. So and that was something I used to do. So seeing his mentalities around that, and Fury Hunter, who got had the number one Master Tour record of all time. And I think like one of the big things that I took away from Fury Hunter is how like networked the top players are. And that was something I was weak on, where they're talking to each other. What do you think is the best deck? What do you think is the best lineup? And I think I often would more just bring what I feel. But if I were, trying to compete at the highest level, just talking and interacting and playing against each other and shoving each other's opinions, getting that feedback from a less biased source. You could still have biases amongst your peer groups, right? But more people can often reduce your own personal bias, and I think that was a big thing that I think Fury Hunter does really well. So just like, and then Monsanto was often talking about he's learning poker and he's trying to fail quickly. So he kind of accepts that he's going to have to fail a lot to get good at poker, but he's trying to do it in an efficient way And I think sometimes poker is hard because it costs you more money because you need those stakes. But he's going about it of like, okay, I know I need to make these mistakes. How can I do it quickly? And how can I use that to get better fast instead of always playing weak games where you're going to win and you're going to feel good. You're going to go home up $100, but you're not necessarily going to get better. And I think so. Some of those concepts you really went into chapters on failure and reflection, which are the second and third chapter. Just some of the ways they thought about it. Because I'm not, this book is more of an art. It's not like, well, we did the science and they evaluated this, gets 8%. It's more like how I think about these things and how I approach them. So I got the interviews I sort of did with them. Really, I think Fury Hunter helped out on reflection and the study chapters, and Monsanto I think definitely helped out on the failure chapter. And we talked about some of our games together back when we were both in GM together. So we played against each other a lot.
So now that you wrote the book, if you could take everything you put into the book and you could put it into like one player, who do you think is the Hearthstone player that in Hearthstone history that you've paid attention to that embodies most of the values you put in the book?
Ooh, I don't know. Like who's like a really I'd say like right now I feel like McBanter is like doing this because he's always studying too. He's watching, and I feel like he's got this like he's really well networked. He's watching other people and he's playing and he's done to do really well, and he's late to the game, right? So he really took the knowledge of other people, and used it to get better really quickly. So he didn't. So I think that's a better example than one of the OGs, because one of the OGs, there was nobody to study, right? If you look at Reynad, like he kind of came in and just was innovating because there was the frontier. But I think with the book is like most of the book isn't you being the best in the world, right? It's you getting up to the top level as efficiently as possible. So I think he's like an example of someone who, because he's late. He started, after me, and I started late. So I think that's a good example. Right now, I don't know them as well. I'd be curious to see people like Santa, Maxi. These are players who are kind of the next wave, and they're crushing it, right? So I'd be curious to see what their process is. Some of it, I think, I get the impression Santa has really strong mentalities, but he's just did his first year of tournament, so I think he's going to be a force to be reckoned with next year. So yeah.
Maxi's 17. His process is Red Bull and Starburst.
Yeah. So,
but I wasn't sure if you're going to say like Hunter Ace or something like that. But yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So without giving too much away, because we want people to buy the book, what would you say the key thing is that holds most Hearthstone players from holds them back from improving?
Yep. So I think the failure mentalities and how you interpret failure and what you do it, and is the worst thing. So one of the things that when I used to coach is the student would be doing something wrong, right? And they kind of know things are going wrong and they don't understand it, and they're having this identity crisis. And like, oh, am I a good player? I was winning, now I'm losing. This feels really bad. What happened? And I think one of the things when you're starting is knowing like you are trying to figure out what the values of this game are. So difference between like me or even like with a pro player, we were talking about Fury Hunter. He is in the highest level of the worlds, and he's like, I made all these mistakes, and he made way less mistakes, exponential mistakes than you, but he's aware of them, right? You're not. And I think one of the things is that I call the concept of assuming failure, or assume it's your fault. So when you lose, you should assume that you did something wrong, that you're not getting something, and that you're not this. Because what most players do is say, oh, my opponent played the bullshit card, that's why I lost. And the opponent did play the bullshit card. Like, it was bullshit, but you also probably fucked up. And what's interesting is like, I remember when I would coach, and I haven't been coaching the last year, but I used to coach a lot. players would show me, oh, turn 8. What was I supposed to do here, right? How am I supposed to be? This is so unlucky. Turn 4, they completely threw the game. They had a whole full win, but they floated like 4 mana. They did nothing, and they would have easily crushed them. But then turn 8, they're like bailing themselves of the mistake they made on turn 4, and they don't know because their brain sees the feedback mechanism of bad things are happening on turn 8, but really turn 4 is where they made their terrible mistake, and I can easily find that, right? So I think it's just that mentality of, I'm doing something, probably a lot of things wrong, like a lot. When I play these tavern brawls, I've played with these 47% win rates decks and gotten 12 wins, and it's because my something like the Brazilian, because most of your opponents are just making so many mistakes. So my point is just assuming you're wrong. Don't blame RNG, right? Assume that you are doing something out of your control, even if you don't know, because you need to give your brain opportunity to solve the problem. And your defense mechanisms are trying to protect your ego. But I also think like no one cares, right? It's like you're playing a video game at home. Nobody's like, oh, that loser, Diamond 7. Like nobody cares, right? So you're protecting your ego for nothing, right? Like at the end of the day, you could be like, oh, I suck, but nobody knows, no one cares. So like if you actually allow yourself to be like, oh, I probably did a lot of bad things bad, and it can be fun to be bad, right? Like it's fun to be bad and learn something for the first time. And I think sometimes pro gamers actually get bored of being good, and I talk about that concept too. You get really good, and now everything's easy, and it can actually be fun. I know I play Path of Exile a little bit, and there are players who go in blind, and they intentionally don't look at the guides because they like that feeling of just knowing nothing and exploring and figuring things out. So I think that just concept of blaming yourself, assuming it's your fault, and not taking the easy out of I got unlucky, so your brain can actually interpret what's happening and get better instead of just finding these easy outs or switching decks or blaming the meta or blaming the devs or saying this game is skillless. It's not. It's just trust me. I'm going to say you could study the game for a while, but like it's really not. And that's the mentality shift most players need. Just like it's my fault. I got to figure this out. So
it's funny because I know I have this concept because Pylet mods my channel, and it's like I lose a game or I win a game, and I'm like, Pylet's gonna hate that I won this game because I know I made mistakes early on, but you don't learn the lessons when you win. Like you realize like, hey, I probably should have done this and that. But if you win the game, it kind of like fades. Whereas like if you lost the game, you're like, oh, I should have made that trade, and I should have done this, and I should have done that, and but when you win, you kind of like, hey, I kind of got away with it, whatever.
And then Pilot, you just got the mentality bullying of like, oh, you sounds like you've already internalized this stuff where I got a 290, but I know I wasn't there, That's the mentality you need, where but it feels bad, right? Like you couldn't be just like, I'm the greatest, I got 290. All right, suck it. All right, but you're like, no, I didn't, it was luck, right?
Definitely
that allows your brain to get better. So
yes, and for me, like that's just my kind of personality. I think that that's something that a lot of people, like you talked about, have trouble kind of just being willing to be vulnerable and being willing to say, I don't know this, I'm bad at this right now, and that's okay. That was one of my favorite parts to read in the book, because I deal with it with my students all the time. I talk about all the time, make your mistakes in practice when we're in class, when we're at rehearsal, mess it up. I'm like, I can't help you if I can't hear the mistakes you're making. This is your safe place to make the mistakes so that then we can correct them before a performance. And for me, that's my personal mentality going into, like, for our THL team that Tito and I are on. We every now and then, something that we need to work on as a team is doing better replay reviews. But I typically post my replays, and I kind of, after the match is done, post my quick thoughts of, hey, this is a turn that I wasn't sure what to do. This is a turn I'm pretty sure that I messed up. This is a turn I knew that I went for a questionable play, but this is why. That way people can kind of see where I'm coming from. And there's one that stuck out the other week against a quest warrior where I looked at it right away saying, what did I do wrong to lose this game? Because I was in control, and I lost. And I'm like, okay, what did I do wrong? and I looked through it, and I knew going into the last turn they had to have an exact sequence of like 5 cards to win the game, and they got
Mhm.
it, including the time warp on the turn
Yep.
that they played the quest reward. And if they got it, I lost. If they didn't, I probably win.
Yeah.
Was it a mistake? Maybe. Is it a play that I'm going to do
Mhm.
again? Definitely.
Mhm. Yeah.
But like what you just said, like you were saying, hey, it's a safe space to like this is where you're making mistakes. But the problem with like a game like Hearthstone is you start making mistakes. You're trying to learn, try and make mistakes, but like, hey, my rank is going down, my MMR is going down. So even though I'm trying to make these be successful
Yep.
and understand that I'm going to make the mistakes, it feels bad when I
Mm.
came in at 2,000 and now I'm at 8,000. What the heck just happened? And
Well, the your brain is coping with this fact that you
Yep.
viewed yourself as a 2,000 player, and now you have an identity crisis because you're 2,800, right? And I've had students where they're just so you're at Diamond 3 and they're so afraid to lose their Diamond 3, right? And like I said, one of the concepts I talk about is don't turn a low stakes situation into a high stakes in your brain. Know that you can. This is one of the big concepts. I now don't worry about losing top 100, right? Because I know I can get it back, and I get it back every time, right? So some days I'm playing bad, maybe I'm playing medium, and maybe I'm just exhausted, and I'm throwing, I'm looking dumb for chat, and I know I'll get it back tomorrow. And then I'll make some big statement about you guys were doubting me. You're saying, "Oh, I'm never gonna watch this stream again." I'm glad the people that stuck by me. It's all bullshit. It's fun. It's dramatic. It's showmanship, but it's actually could be fun. So I think this feeling. What do you really lose? You're losing just your own self perception when you lose rank, because nobody cares, right? Nobody cares if you're 2,000 or 2,800. People care if you're number one or anything else, right? If you get rank 2, people are like, oh, why not rank 1? Rank 1 is the only one that people really do care about, right? So if it's going to 2,281, no one cares. Even I tell my mom I got number 1 legend today, she doesn't care, right? Like it's just, and I think recognizing that, like, you care, but you are not going to get better if you're freaking out every time you lose MMR, right? So you have to create these scenarios where you can afford to lose and you can afford to make mistakes, and maybe you have a 0% win rate for 2 days, but creating that environment where it's okay. And if you don't, then the problem is if you don't allow that, you're going to stick to time established strategies. And this is a concept called the loser's game. And I did it in tennis and in chess, where I would play very much to not make mistakes. And in the short term, it would very much help me, right? But in the long term, I didn't get better. And that's something you need in Hearthstone. Just that willingness to make mistakes will make you better. So that's kind of one of the concepts of the book, really. So yeah.
it's all how you frame it, right? Like
Yep.
I have missed Legend, I think, once in the last 5 years, and that month felt really bad. But even still, I know I'm a Legend player. I know
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm a high Legend player, but I'm a Legend player. I have 5 years to confirm that. But when it gets to be the 16th of the month and I haven't hit Legend yet, whether it's because I've been playing a ton and I haven't got there yet, or I've been too busy or whatever like that, I get to like halfway through the month and I'm not there yet. I start getting anxious. And
Mm-hmm.
it only matters to me because it's not like anyone outside of me really cares if I hit Legend or not, but I really like, oh, what's going
Yeah.
on? Why am I having a hard time? Maybe I'm not as good at the game as I thought I was. Like, why can't I figure this out? How can't I find the right deck for me and whatnot? And it becomes this like weight that doesn't need to be there.
Mm-hmm. And
I
I
can
think
attest to this
the
for Tito, because I think, Tito, you were more anxious last month when I missed Legend than I was about missing Legend. It was so funny. I'm like, well, I didn't play as much, which actually I played a lot more than I thought that I did, and I probably shouldn't have missed Legend, but it is what it is. It's fine.
yeah. Yeah, and I think right at the beginning of the failure chapter, I say almost always the biggest cost of failure to people is your own self perception.
Yep.
You know, it's even in the dance world, you go ask someone to dance and they say no, and like just you have that public this, but just deep down you're like, oh, I'm not good enough. I must think, and you have these mentalities of But so often we're so trying to protect this view of like, I am a good player. And, I talk, there's a clip from William Defoe, but I kind of did this of like, maybe I'm just terrible. Like maybe I can accept that, like that's okay. And I think if you say, well, I'm just terrible now, but I'm going to be good. And I know if my processes are good, and this is why you get good at one thing, it transfers. I know I was terrible at, drumming. And I did the process. I got a teacher. I did my drills. I did higher stake situations. And then 2 years later, I was pretty darn good. I'm not professional level, I was just 2 years in high school. And I think you transfer that of like, okay, I was good. I got number 1 legend with a deck, and I'm really struggling with this deck, or I got top 1,000. I know I've done it before. I can do it again in this new situation. I just have to trust the process. And eventually, when you've done the process so many times, you really will trust the process because you understand it. But those first times are really hard. And that's why the first time you're getting good at something, it can be really, really hard because you don't believe in the process. You're doubting it, and every time, like, oh, I got to just keep playing. You're like, really? Maybe I'm just terrible, maybe I'll never be good, But if you've done it before, you'll have that stronger belief. And then you eventually feel you won't have that anxiety because you've just done these things so many times. So
Yeah, using the ballroom analogy or the dancing analogy, it was that was I had the complete opposite effect when I was doing it because I could lead. And I took ballroom 1 where, a bunch of girls brought their boyfriends that didn't want to be there and whatnot like that. So they were all they had the back lead, and I got there. And if you don't know anything about dancing, you probably don't want to talk about. But I got there, and I would dance with the girls. They make you switch every time, and
yeah.
like they would start to try to back lead me because that's what they expected. And I was like, no, 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 I'm running this show. And
Yeah.
from that point, like I never had to find, like, everyone found me to dance, and
Yeah.
I'm a short guy. I'm not very good looking, but like because I could do this particular skill, I
Mm-hmm.
was in demand, and that helped me to be more, I guess, aggressive and learning how to be better at dancing and really kind of enhance it because I found that I had a natural skill, natural ability, and I was able to go with that. And I don't know, it's just a lot of fun, and it's just kind of evaluating what you want of a thing and what skills you have, and go from there. So speaking of skills you have and don't have, was writing a book hard? And did you have to use the principles in the book to write the book?
Yeah. I think some of the book is almost a testament to his own books. I had to get good at writing a book, right? And I had read a book a long time ago called The War of Art, and the book, I can tell you the whole book. You don't have to read it. It's basically just show up and work every day. Like that's what they did, and I think a lot of other authors have said. So that's what I trusted the process, right? So every day I started in July of last year, and I skipped Path of Exile season, right? Because that's what I normally do, like with my 2 hours free time. But I was like, no, I'm going to write this book instead. And I drink my coffee, and I would just type for about an hour and a half. Sometimes my hands would start hurting because I still have like hands are doing way better, but like they would still like it would get too much, or I'd get writer's block, or I just get exhausted, and then I'd be like, okay, I'm done. I did my time, and I did that for about 5 months, and then I kind of like had something. I had all these things, and then I said, okay, well, what do I need to do next, right? What is the book? What is this? Oh, I need to go seek people out. So, I talked to my mom, networking, and she said, well, you need an editor. I started working at that editor, and I kind of said, I need not just help on the grammar. I need you to help me get into a coherent idea. And so just using those social networks to help somebody who this, and we kind of turned it, has made all these like individual concepts. I might talk about, results oriented thinking, but like, where does that go in the scope of things, right? Or blaming RNG, where does that go to the scope of things? And we kind of turned it in. So that's kind of what it was. But it's definitely, I kind of had all these ideas in my brain. So like writing it wasn't the hard part. And then even I would talk to people. So I remember I was talking to my sister-in-law, and she's like, so you should, she said, like, you should write about, like, what does it really mean to be good? And I was like, oh, what does it mean to be good? You know, and that's, if you read the first chapter, like, we have the game objective good, we have the peer validation good, we have the deep senses good, we have the internal locus of control good. We have all these different kind of ways of approaching what it means to be good. So just thinking about that. So, you know, I talk to people and I would share the idea and like say, what do you think? And, you know, so I think that's kind of, I think it was very rewarding. But I just went into it blind, and I'd written articles before. You know, it's not like I'd never written something. You know, we all go to school, right? But it just turning into one giant thing from a bunch of individual mini articles is kind of what happened.
So you had this concept like, hey, I'm going to write a book. Here's my idea for the book. Here's what I'm thinking about it. And now you have the book. How close was it from point A to point B? How close is the end result from what you envisioned at the beginning?
I don't even know what I envisioned. You know, I just had this, you know, this kind of like, I want to write a book, and it kind of wants to be about value in Hearthstone. Like that was the concept, right? Like, we have this, I told you and then it just kind of expanded of like, how do you know, if you're talking about, and we're going to talk about later, I think, okay, you have the value of trading versus going face. How do you actually go about and learn that, right? Because we can go all this, but what is the process of getting this to do? You know, it is, you can't, it's something like you really have to live it, not just read about it. And I think that's kind of where kind of one thing kind of led to another. And then I was also just talking about random ideas, and a lot got cut as well. Like there's a lot of stuff that was like, I thought was good stuff, but it really just didn't make sense in the book, you know? So that's kind of, you know, what the book kind of evolved. You know, there's an original general idea, that it sort of a concept emerged, you know, like it's like you plant the seed and then you find out this is the fruit that you didn't even know about that actually grew from it. So
are you already planning your next book?
I'm thinking about ideas, but I don't know. I will see if this, you know, what people like about this. If it's, you know, I've thought about different ideas. I've thought about writing a book on chronic pain. I've thought about writing a book on like game theory in, you know, personal life. You know, I was thinking of the concept of, you know, everybody's lying on their resumes now, but everyone's lying job postings, and, you know, what the game theory is about that, you know, because I know a lot about games. And I thought about studying game theory in college, but these are just random ideas. Who knows? So, you know, I'm going to see how this book does, if people like it, if people say they want more, if it just like, you know, fizzles out, who knows? But that's kind of, I think I'm waiting right now before writing the next book. So.
All right. So this may be our longest interview of all time, but we're going to wrap it up with a final question. If someone is on the fence about buying the book, why do you think they should?
So one, it's if you're on the fence, if you watch the stream and you like watching the stream, it's fun. Like, it's fun. I do a lot of analogies, just like I do on the stream. If you like me, that's most people this, I think you're just gonna have fun reading it. You know, you're gonna have fun. It doesn't have to be this giant complex thing. It's gonna be fun. And if you read it and you're like, I don't really want to implement this, I think you'll still have a fun time doing it. You know, right now the Kindle version's $10, the paperback is $15, so it's like 2 subs. So, you know, you could unsubscribe for 2 months and then resubscribe, get the book, enjoy it. So it's very low cost, right? It takes about, if you want to speed read it, you probably read it in 4 hours. You know, I think if you're really thinking about the concepts, it'll take longer, but if you're just trying to go, so it's fun. You'll understand me better. And if you're watching the stream 3 hours a day, I think you'll get more value out of reading the book than you will watching the stream. So a little different, you know, one's more engaged, one's not, but I think that's some of the concept there. So
I'm going to say you don't need to unsub, just buy the book and keep subbing. It's fine.
yeah.
So, Pylet, do we have any news?
We have a little bit of news. It's a light news week for this week.
Thank
Next
goodness.
week, not quite as much. Yes. But we have a couple of things from after the hotfix patch that we talked about last week. There's a couple cards that have been banned in Wild and Standard. The Caverns of Time version of Aviana, not the original one from, was it Grand Tournament when that card was released, I think, is way before I started
Sounds
playing.
right.
The original one is fine. The Caverns of Time one is banned, and Wave of Nostalgia, the shaman spell that transforms everything into legendary minions from the past, are both banned right now in Wild and Standard because there is a major bug with disconnects. You get stuck in trying to connect to a game for multiple hours at a time that is no longer there. So that is banned until it is fixed. And then we have the announcement of the announcement for 34.2, which is the Battlegrounds patch, but we do not have any information on it yet. So we know that that patch is coming on Tuesday, December 2nd. That'll start the new BG season, which is, they have the title for it, but I don't have it open. The Tavern at the Edge of Time, but we don't have any reveals yet. On Monday, December 1st, they're doing a reveal stream with Mitchell Lowen and Shady Bunny, and then on Tuesday, after the patch is out, there will be 2 Q&A streams with devs on Dog Dog and Hoppa Bear's channel. So if you're a BG's player, you can check those out, and you will probably know more than we do currently about that.
Dog is awesome, and we love Happa. Fantastic streamer. Hearthstone. If you haven't watched Happa, she's high energy and really really good at what she does. Obviously, Dog is amazing what he does. And I like the fact that Wave of Nostalgia is disconnects, because that's just actual nostalgia for things that happened previously in the game. So all right. So no hands. We're already an hour and a half in. I am very excited to talk about value of going face of trading, but are you good to continue on here? Or
Yep. I mean, so
all right, Pylet, take it away.
All right. So trying to use some of the concepts that No Hands talked about in the book. One of the things that came up in our discussions was one of the common decisions that we have to make in every game of Hearthstone is, where do we attack? Do we send a minion face? Do we trade? What do we trade into? All of those things, and those choices and micro decisions of what we do all add up to a significant impact on the outcome of the game, even if it seems very minor in the moment. So going to kind of try to structure this as an overall kind of general baseline. What do we think when we're looking into this? Then kind of dig into some more concepts, and then kind of bring it back. Maybe especially kind of, when do we find ourselves, most commonly breaking the rules that we set for ourselves on this. But we'll kind of see where the discussion goes. But No Hands, I'll start with you, especially as the highest ranked and achieving player in this chat right now. Do you have any kind of baseline rules or guides that you use when you're trying to decide where to send an attack?
Best player in this conversation for now.
Yeah, so good point, right? That's the right mentality. Who's the people say who's the best player, and it's more like, who's the best player today, because next month it's somebody else, next month it's somebody else.
I think we got some time before that proves not true.
So I think
Infinity.
the simple rules are is trade more early, because board control is more valuable early. Go face as you're getting low later, because you're running out of time. But it gets more complicated than that. But I think those are the general things of trading early. But I think the big thing is thinking about, what is the value of controlling the board versus what is the value of dealing face damage. Those are the 2 big things. There's a lot of things, and we can actually be fun to talk about, list all the benefits of going face, all the benefits of trading. But that's kind of the mentality. So I think a big concept is also, how much burn do you have, right? That's going to change whether you trade or face. So a good example, I was playing today, and I noted it down for this. I was playing this new Quest Hunter, and I could have, my rogue opponent, I forgot with that 9-mana spell, they high rolled 2 of the 2/7 Draenei that switches to a 7/2 with immune the next turn. So really good board control tool. And I'm in this weird spot where I can put them down to 6 life if I hero power and go all face. And that looks really good, right? Like that's 3 hero powers. But I know I'm going to my turn 6, and I'm not going to be able to set up a fast 2-turn lethal here. I know I'm going to need the board in the future. So I make the tough decision after thinking about it. Like I have to trade into this 2/7. And I have a 7/2 on board. That's why it's so hard, because you want to go face with that, right? So I trade into that and I lose my 7/2, but then I end up playing the Draenei and the 1/2 and the 5-mana quest reward and end up winning on turn 7. So that was a spot where I realized, one, the value of damaging the face isn't that much because I can't set up a 2-turn lethal or even a 3-turn lethal. 2, they're going to counter kill me and completely control the board if I don't remove this. And 3, I'm going to need board control to win the game. So that's different than if I had 2 kill commands, right, in hand, and I can put them down to 6. Then you would want to go doll face, and they can't kill you, and then you ship it. And that's the kind of context you kind of need when you're deciding whether to go face or trade in these kind of spots. So
one of my favorite sayings is always bad players go face, good players trade, great players go face, right?
yeah.
So I always find it interesting because like the way I try to approach things, and it's not the right way, but the way I approach things is I try to determine in a matchup, am I the controller or am I the beatdown or whatever? And if I am figuring I'm the beatdown, I trade less. And not sometimes to my detriment, because I'm like, I need to get there before they can get there. And sometimes maybe I should have taken the value trade. In fact, I get yelled at by my chat all the time. It's like, hey, you should have traded. You should have. I didn't like that you didn't trade that, or you didn't take the value trade. But I'm like, I gotta get the damage face because turn 7, or turn 6, the Tortola comes down and I'm done.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, I'm trying to race it, and I'm like, well, the value trade is. But if I would have traded, maybe I would have had better opportunities later on if I'm smart. But like it's really hard. And then you get the weird cards like leeches. It's like you can't. I always feel like I can't ignore leeches, but at the same time, it's like I don't want to trade into them. So it's like that's a very unique card right there that kind of messes everything up.
Leeches are a really interesting one, where there's a lot of situations where you're in this leech chicken, where you're waiting for them to go corpse explosion, and they're trying to delay it as much as possible. And you think of like, okay, because when you do all the trades on leeches and they go corpse explosion, right? And you're like, oh, I could have just gone all face, right? So I think board clears is one of the number of reasons you go face. If your opponent's going to do a brawl or a corpse explosion the next turn, well, that board control doesn't really matter, right? So because of the scalability of the board control. So that's a really common example. But sometimes then if you don't trade, all of a sudden, let's say they slam down the 6-mana guy and then they do double, all those leeches. So this is the whole idea, is that you have all these things going on and you got to evaluate, okay, what are the likely plays for next turn? What are the punishes? When I decide, do I trade on these leeches or do I go face? So.
And the 2 cards right now that I find the most interesting is like, so Tank Engineer, like I've been playing, is really interesting because you play it. It's a 2/1 with Divine Shield, and they don't want to kill it because it becomes a 7/7. So that's why I try to take advantage of that and I buff it. So then it's like, well, now we have to kill it, but now it's still going to be a 7/7, and how are we going to deal with it? But then the other interesting card I think is Bosamdi, because the whole Bosamdi deck, because that deck I hate playing against, because it's not only does Bosamdi summon another minion that has its boons and the taunt and stuff like that, but it's also playing the 2/2 with taunt that then summons another thing, and they play the other thing with taunt that summons another thing. It just feels impossible to get through. And it's like, if you beat them early, it's great, but once they get set, I don't know how you beat that deck if you don't have over the top burn. So it's like, it's really hard to evaluate when I should trade, when I should go face, especially it revolves heavily around the matchup knowledge.
Yeah. And I think the big thing you can do when you're playing is when you get punished, be like, oh, this was a punish. Well, did I think about that beforehand? Because if you didn't, if it surprises you, what does that mean? Your brain wasn't you doing it when it was doing that calculation. But if it doesn't surprise you, what does that mean? Your brain thought about it and still decided. Now you can evaluate, like, maybe I was off on the calculation, but like, let's say there's a 1 in 4 that they're going to have the punish. it's going to happen, right? So if you're like, well, I got punished, therefore it's wrong, that's the results oriented thinking, right? But anytime a punish surprises you, that's a sign that your brain wasn't thinking about it. So that's a great chance to use the reflection. Think, okay, this happened. Let's remember that, right? So if you're really try harding, you take a notepad and you write it down. And I used to do that when I was like competing. Say, play around turn 4 by Bansandi play, right? Something like that. So,
But the flip side of that is that you can't play passively. You have to make them have it in some cases, right? Because it's like if you don't make the plays to go face or try to get that damage in because you're worried about them having the Busamdi and then how am I going to deal with that? Then when you're giving them opportunities to get it. And then eventually
yeah.
you're just going to be there. So you have to like if they get it, you're going to lose anyway. So like if you understand that concept is like if they have it, they have it, and I'm going to lose. How do I take advantage of the fact situation that maybe they don't have it? And that's a really hard thing to
Yep.
get your head around.
There are some situations where it is exactly that, where you just have to assume they don't have it. The longer you think the game is likely to go on, if it's you don't want a situation on turn 3 where if they have a certain card, you lose the game, and that doesn't happen as much anymore. But I remember watching a game Board Control played where he didn't he went hero power pass on turn 2 and he had a wild pyro, and his opponent went coin Flappy Bird. I can't even remember the real name, and then the Flappy Bird just ended the game, right, on the spot. And his opponent is going to have that Flappy Bird a lot, right? And that's the ideal play. And if he had played the pyro on turn 2, he would have had the answer for it. So that's a spot where you don't really want to lose the game every time they go Flappy Bird and then they go Wind Fury, like, which that's what happened. Where other spots you're like, okay, even if they don't have Ziliax, like if I'm playing aggro here, I'm probably still going to lose. So I just need to risk it and make them have it and accept. So both situations can be true. And that's what's hard about it, right? If you have an always rule of like always make them have it, you're going to this, where if you have a always play around things, that's also going to be a bad rule. So you need to find the intermediate values of like, when do I make them have it? And when do I not let them have it? So that's the kind of higher level mentality if you want to play more optimally in that situation.
And normally this is not the podcast where you come to get the names of cards, but that was Vicious Fledgling.
Vicious, yeah. So it's fair.
It's definitely. This is a topic and a skill that requires other skills to be able to do it effectively. You have to know the matchups, and you have to be able to plan your turns ahead, and being able to look at how do I get from now to the end of the game in a positive way for me. And there's a lot of variables in there that you have to figure out. For me, especially once you figure out the matchup stuff, which is kind of the next thing that we'll talk about, because I do think it's a big thing with this specifically. My kind of go-to, saying or general rule that I have, for most games is, how do I make the best play for me that is also the most awkward for my opponent? And that normally gets you in a really good spot to where you're doing things efficiently and they're not able to. And sometimes that is, you're going to want to trade off my stuff anyways because my clock is a lot faster than yours. I'm hitting you in the face and you have to deal with it. Sometimes it's their clock is faster. I have these 1/1s that can kill off all of your 3/1s. I'm going to make it awkward for you because now my 2/3s get to live, or my 4/3s, or whatever it is. And then you're kind of setting yourself up in that better spot because of it.
The hardest thing I always run into is, and this is a problem that drives me absolutely nuts, is when you have enough damage to get them down to like 3 or 2 or 1. You don't have exact lethal. And you're like, do I go all in now? And you're like, or do I wait and see if I get another piece to get there? And every time I wait, something happens and I don't win. But every time I go in and I get them down to 1, they flip the game and then I can't get over, and then they heal back up and whatnot. And I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't have gone back in. And that is the most frustrating part about deciding a lot of this is like when you don't have the what you need. It's like, well, when do I take advantage of what I have now, or do I wait and try to
Yeah.
figure it out?
And I think a good control player will put you in these damned if you do, damned if you don't situations where they have the answer if you do this and the answer if you do that. A good controller will intentionally steer the situation where they're likely, where it's very hard for them to be in a situation where they just always lose, right? So now they might have the situations where they don't have the luxury, but there's often situations where like, I really want to go brawl here, right? But I know if they have the follow up the next turn, I have no answer for it and I lose the game on the spot. So I'm going to take a less awkward play. And to do that, I have to concede some board pressure or some face damage. I have to use my face as a resource. I have to give up something, right? Because I wanted to go brawl. And so a good control player will. So your job as the mid range player, if you're playing against the control, is to continuously make it awkward. And often when I'm playing mid-range against control, it's just I'm having all this awkward pressure for a long time. And eventually they've used all their control resources, and maybe they're playing like Marin, for example. They play that 3-mana 6/6, turns all their managed legendaries. That's their last chance. And then they just they lower a bunch of stats, and then I win the game because they have no more resources. So that's the kind of thing you're doing on the aggressive. But those are really hard skills to learn. They're not simple rules like spend your mana to this. Of like, so putting the pressure on in a way that's awkward over a long period of time. So those are, but that's kind of the situation you want. If you're in that situation a lot, you think your opponent might be leveraging that. It might not be a coincidence that that's happening. So.
And that's a hard thing too, as far as putting like if I can play out every single card I have and put pressure on the board, is that the right play? Like, do I win next turn? Maybe, but like, is it worth holding back a couple cards? Maybe. Is it? Should I? Should I? It's like those decisions are like some of the hardest in Hearthstone. I know a lot of people say, "Oh, aggro is easy to play. You just play cards and hit them in the face." Aggro is just as difficult as anything else to make the good decisions on how to play against whatever they're showing against you.
Yeah, and I think the big thing that you do is like afterwards you say when something goes badly, just reflect like, oh, I played this and they did that, right? Remember that, like, or oh, I played it and they didn't have the answer and I just crushed them. Remember that too. And you're giving your brain all these data points that eventually it uses when you've played a lot. You have a feel for how things are likely to go. And this is very imperfect. It's using, human biases and cognition. I talk about how players in poker, they get kings and they're immediately afraid somebody's gonna have aces. Like they always have aces when I have kings. And really it's like, they have aces about 1 in 200 times when you have kings, right? That's the actual math on it. Don't quote me on that. But people will feel like it always happens because they remember when they had aces and they lost all this money and that really hurt them, right? They don't remember, they just re-raised and got a bunch of folds and made $30 on the spot. Like that's often what happens too, right? So a lot of those kind of things, but that's generally how you want to be approaching it. So
yeah, you remember
in
the
poker
times
and Hearthstone and everything. Oh, go ahead.
You remember the times that they go shutter block into twin perfect Ziliacs. You don't remember the times that they just hit concede.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing. You don't remember the big wins, but you remember the big losses.
So matchups we keep coming back to. So that's something to where I think that's one of the big things that we have to look at when we're deciding these things. And for me, one of the big things I'm looking at is how do the game plans and speeds of the decks line up, especially if you have like an aggro against aggro matchup. One of them is always going to naturally kind of play a little bit quicker. So kind of figuring out where you're at with that, but also in turn also kind of figure out where some of those swing turns might be to where different control decks are better at controlling different parts of the game. I feel like right now, Death Knight especially is able to control some early game pretty comfortably with the leeches and things like that, and then still have some of the big board clears later to where warrior, you might have a couple turns before they start to hostile invader and brawl and do this and constantly blow up your board. And then once you know those things, being able to then decide, okay, I have these 3 minions. If I go face, do they take away board control from me? If I trade, do I have enough damage? And being able to look at and evaluate all those different potential scenarios based on what you have, what they currently have and might have, and what you think you're able to do in the next few turns really plays into it. And having that matchup knowledge is really, really important.
And like hostile invader is a great example, right? Because it's like, well, if I have to get rid of you, you get that mentality if I have to get rid of it, because if I don't get rid of it, then it's going to stunt my board growth, and I'm not gonna be able. But then it's like with things like that, and things like with just about anything. Like if you play against a Protoss priest and you play your Grifta and you grab your control minion and you grab their little 2/2 with the lifesteal that reduces the cost of their Protoss, and you steal it and you kill it and it's not a death, well, then you have this mentality of, okay, that's how I beat this deck. Yeah, that's a good tool that might win sometimes, but that's not the only way you win against that deck. So you have to try to wrap your head around like, hey, this is a good strategy. Not the only strategy,
What do you
but it's
guys
a tool
think
in the
you do?
toolbox.
What do you think is a good rule of thumb if you don't know the matchups well?
Go face. They don't let them. If you kill them, they can't play cards.
Putting life down to 0. That is a good answer.
So Tito's been listening to me too much of their cards don't matter if they're dead. I think it depends on how many minions I've seen, and this is something that we'll kind of talk about here later, of especially in something that's aggressive. I like pushing the damage unless doing a trade lets me push more damage in the long run. So I can send this, 1/1 or 1/2 or whatever little minion that I played for 1 mana. I can keep sending this face, or I can trade off this, 3/1 that's going to kill off my bigger minion. And now I get to push, 4 damage face for 3 turns. And it lets me push more damage in the long run. And that's where I start looking at trades more often, especially in aggressive matchups. But if you're early meta and when you don't know the matchup, it's definitely a lot harder. And then also when you see decks that you're not expecting, which is somewhere that I thrive and like playing in, because I like putting other people in that mode where my favorite thing in Hearthstone is seeing my cards highlight red because my opponent's reading my cards because I haven't seen it before.
Mhm. Yeah, I do a lot of that too, right? It's like I love when they like, I don't what, and it's like they go off it and they come back on it, and they go back off it and come back on it. I would say if you don't know the matchup, obviously I say kill face, but like when you know the matchup, you're trying to counterbalance your gameplay versus their game plan. If you don't know the matchup, go with your game plan. Try to get your game plan to work. And then as you start to lose, then say, okay, this is why my game plan didn't work in this particular matchup, because they summoned a bunch of taunts and that didn't work for me because I couldn't get through. I didn't have a way to get through. And so I think that is, in my opinion, that's a decent approach. But what is your opinion there, Mr. No Hands Gamer?
Yeah, so I think just doing your game plan with the highest tempo possible is the general rule. When I play Wild, I don't know half the decks I'm playing against, if not 70%. And if I play what's a Dark Glare, it's not Dark Glare, more like a Pain Warlock with Quest Pain Warlock. I know I'm gonna damage myself. I'm gonna spend my mana, and I'm gonna get some Flesh Giants down. Then I'm gonna play my quest reward, and then I'm gonna deal damage. And I'm just gonna do that very efficiently. And I'll do some basic board control, but I know like I can win sometimes with my giants, and then sometimes I win with my quest reward. And I don't know, exactly what tech cards they are. I don't know when a surprise Lothab, or they Mutanis me, or they dirty rat me. I just kind of don't play around things because I don't know. I just do an efficient play. So, maybe there's a scenario where I don't know their deck very well, and I can conveniently play around a dirty rat. Maybe I do because I'm a little more advanced, but I'm not going to do that unless it's not convenient, right? So if I can get the question we're down on 5. Okay, by some magic I can complete it all on 4. I'm going to do that. I'm not going to be like, well, I need to. Where if you know a matchup really well, let's say you're in a control matchup and their win condition is eat your with Mutanus, I might play around that really well. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do my game plan as efficient as possible. And then when it goes poorly, you reflect and you say, oh, I need to play around this card the next time. So I think that's generally how you go about it. You just do your thing very efficiently, figure out when it goes wrong, and then remember those spots. So
It's always weird when it's like you figure, hey, I'm gonna just go face because they're gonna have to make the value trades because, or they're gonna have to make the trades because I don't need to. They're gonna have to, and then they don't trade, and you're like, okay, wait, why not? And then you're like, okay.
yeah. So then you think, oh, I was wrong about them having to trade. Maybe I have to trade next time.
Yep.
So
Then you end up in this game of chicken sometimes,
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, why didn't they trade? Do they have something? Do I go for it, or do I say, nope, I'm committing to this and seeing if you flinch first? And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
But then, like we've talked about, it's
Yeah.
another data point. It's another thing that you can learn from.
Yeah. I feel like in the current meta, there aren't as many if you flinch first kind of matchups
No.
where we're just double face racing, but there have been in the past where it's like, oh, do you go for all the trades or do you go this 2-turn lethal? And if they have the fireball, you get counter lethal, but then, they pull off some, there's weird stuff where then, or do you go with the compromise where you trade one minion and you go face with the others? There's a lot of these tough situations with those kind of matchups.
Yeah, I think most of them currently are mirrors, like, an aggro pain DH mirror. That's definitely one to where, you kind of feel out and have to see, okay, if I'm going face, do I have the burn from hand? If I let them go face, do I have a read that they might have burn because they've been holding these 2 cards that are probably an acupuncture hot coals that's going to blow up my board here in a little bit, or like the aggro paladin, the arena paladin with Crusader's aura. Do I need to play around that early on? It's definitely one of those things that you always just have in the back of your mind.
But then they also have the cards that like put you to decision on your turn that you know what the outcome will be. Like, hey, they have Posic. Like, how do I deal with that? Now I have 2 3/3s in my hand that are going to go to them if I kill it. Do I play the 3/3? Do I just deal with it? Do I work around it? Or they have a Sylvanas up, like, okay, that's a death rattle going to steal one of my minions. How do I take care of that in a way that is going to be advantageous to me and put them in a more awkward position? It's not always as easy as it sounds. I mean, those are the two opposite, the ones I thought about.
Yeah. I think Posic was a great one when it was in standard for discussing stuff like this, because it was a lot of decision making of, okay, they've played this. Do I abandon my plan and play a vanilla 3/3 that prevents them from getting it? Or do I say, I don't care and I'm just going to continue my plan?
And then after playing against Pozic all this time, they put this other card that was a legendary recently this year, I think. It was like, if you kill it on your turn, it does 4 damage or 3 damage to everything. But if they kill it on their turn, it does 1 damage.
Tendril, whatever
and
it
we
was.
thought it was going to, this was going to be the next Pozic, and it wasn't. It never saw play.
Nope.
Yeah, Pozic was a tricky one for sure.
So how often do you feel like the stage of the game affects this decision? I feel like it affects it a lot. If you're in the first 3 turns compared to turn 4 through 6 compared to you're in the late game, whatever that is for the meta, because late game now is much different than it was back in Stormwind meta, when once you got to turn 8, everyone was blowing up from something, most likely. So
yeah,
go ahead.
I think the game, and this is much more mid-range based than it was in previous. So trading, but at the same time, there's less must remove. But I think trading is better than it has been in the past. But also, it really depends on. So a good example of a trade deck versus a face deck, where they're both aggro decks, is you're playing Zoo Paladin versus you were playing like there was that face hunter with like the mini quests, would you get the 3 leopard gnomes, and that was literally just pure face, with no trading, no nothing. Where the Zoo Warlock, you might run 2 Soulfires, or sometimes some didn't even run any. So the deck would have 0 way. It didn't have the rogue kind of like backstab board control tools, and it didn't have burn, but it had really efficient minions and it had the hero power tap. So you actually had to trade a lot, because the moment you lost board, you usually lost the game. So those are 2 examples of knowing kind of how your deck works. And there also could be situations where, if you're up against a deck that you have burn versus charge, a Leroy might get countered by Tortollan, even though Leroy's not in the meta, where if you just have Fireball, you can get through that. So there's all these decisions matter. So we start off with our rules of thumb, but then we find out our rules of thumb are almost always incorrect. And that's why every Hearthstone player, that's what's brilliant about the game, is that they they add a new card in, and it changes all your equilibriums. So right now, why is Discover Hunter so good? It's that Sylvanas, that all of a sudden used to be like Discover Hunter didn't win back board, and now it's like I have all these situations where I go all face. They go, it's like they don't know Hunter, and they Sylvanas, and they clear all my minions. So I was probably needed to trade in certain spots that I didn't, because I just forget about Sylvanas because it's still a new card to me. So really, your deck, their deck, so many different factors go into these concepts. So
You're muted, Tito.
Muted.
No, I'm muted.
There we go.
So we talked about this last week with Tic Tac. I think one of the more interesting examples was against Odin Warrior, where like you could beat Odin Warrior what you were playing, if you could pressure them enough where they couldn't afford to play Odin because you had enough pressure on them. And that I've always thought was a really interesting push and pull, because once they got Odin down, you were probably dead if you didn't have enough pressure to kill them.
Yeah.
Because they were just going to play all their armor cards and punch you in the face and clear all your mains and whatnot. But like, if you could make it so that way, if they couldn't afford to play Odin, they had to keep kind of like clearing your board or whatnot, then you had an opportunity to win. I thought that I think that kind of fits in here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the current game feels very mid-rangey, to where you are just kind of finding ways to control and maintain control of the board, and setting that up. Especially we have a little bit more of it now than we have, I feel like, for the past year. But definitely burn from hand is way down from other metas. And that definitely factors in a lot in these, so where it's really easy to send a bunch of damage face if you're looking at fireballs or eviscerates constantly, or you mentioned it earlier, the kill command, the hunter card, to where it's easy to focus in on just face because I'm looking at a handful of damage, compared to I'm looking at a handful of minions that have to live to hit face, and setting it up to where that's going to actually happen.
What do you mean there's no damage from you just play 2 9/4 Colossuses for like no mana?
Slightly different than an aggro deck. A little bit. There's a lot more armor in that deck. So one thing, we've kind of talked around this a little bit, but it's something that popped in my head late, so I added it in, is there's other things that we have to kind of evaluate when we're looking at these minions. Tito, you talked about Bumswandi, to where that death rattle is something that definitely affects if you're killing it. If there's any aura-like effects, spell damage cards, or if there's anything that has interaction with other cards, that they have. So where if you know that Tito's playing, his Bubble Paladin that has a bunch of buffs, you're more likely to kill something off before he buffs it up. If there's locations in
Yeah.
play, that affects it to where, oh, they have a bunch of 1/1s, that's fine. Oh, they have Horizon's Edge. That's a little less fine because now they're going to ping off my entire board 1/1 at a time. And being able to factor those in and then also have a plan for dealing with the other side of it if you decide not to. If you decide, I'm going to avoid the spell damage minion, and now they have a way to draw their eruptions. Or,
Yeah.
I'm going to deal with this death rattle, and now the death rattles that popped out are more, of a problem. That popped in my head just because I was playing Arena, and my opponent decided to kill off the Warlock Queen, the 4/4 that pops out 2/4/6s, and they killed it off, and then seemed surprised that there was more damage on board afterwards, or knew that they were losing anyways and just traded and then decided to concede there. But those are definitely things that you have to factor in when you're trying to decide what to do with these attacks and what to deal with and what not to.
Yeah. I think the Bunsandi is a really good example because usually I pick lifesteal and some people pick rush. Taunt is usually not there, where it kind of has this soft taunt because you understand that the damage you do face is going to get negated often. So unless you're like, they're at 80, they have like 80 max life, but they're at 30 or 20. So your damage really matters. It's often a situation where this card's likely to full heal them. It's very common with Zilliax too, right? The Zilliax is likely to full heal them. So there's these situations where you're better off fully erring on the side of board control over face damage because they're going to heal up that face damage anyways. That's a good example of a card that often has that situation.
And kind of, I think another example too is when to. I think we sometimes overvalue certain cards where you want to save them for the situations, like you want to save red card for Bosamdi, possibly. But if you're playing an aggro deck, like sometimes it's the right play to play a red card on a 3/2 that's on the board that might clear your board, where you can just keep pushing damage. It's like, let's get this down. Let me just keep pushing damage, and let's kill them before they get the Bosamdi down. And it's like you have this mindset of like, hey, this card is for this situation, but sometimes just get it, just do it, just get it done. And again, they can't play cards if they're dead.
Yeah. I've red carded a number of Tortolan Travelers, the 1/5, just because I'm like, I don't have a way to deal with this now that doesn't completely destroy my game plan, and I'm just going to deal with it in 2 turns and make it a later problem because I can deal with it then because I have acupuncture hot coals. But my game plan now doesn't fit that.
And sometimes you red card it twice. They're like, oh, we got it back. Nope, you don't. And then I'm just pushing the damage.
Yeah. Just little minions that you wouldn't expect to red card, but it's just like, well, my goal is for this to not wake up anyways, so let's do this and try to end the game rather than waiting for the perfect card. It could be a real good
play with both like red card and Glacial Shard, which is kind of a similar card.
Yep.
Where if you know you're going to clear in the next turn or 2 turns from now with the red card, so let's say you have Sylvanas and you're going to deal 4 to all. You freeze the 4 health minion. You don't freeze the 5 health minion. So there's like, let's say they have a 5/4 and a 4/4. Let's say they have a 5/5 and a 5/4. Maybe they're Shaman. They got that taunt guy. You freeze the one that's already in range. And so, which is often you think, oh, I'm going to freeze the high health minion, but it's often not. You often freeze the low health minion because you don't want them to be able to trade it off because you want to get more value out of your board clear later. So that's a situation. No, that had taunt in that example, but you might freeze 2 of their minions and then go face with all your minions. They redevelop, then you go Sylvanas, and that's like why the Discover Hunter can be so powerful because of plays like that.
This is kind of a side a little bit, but like I was just thinking about what we were talking about before into poker and stuff like that. Are there people that you play on ladder that you just know what they're going to do, and like you have like, so it's beyond matchup knowledge, it's matchup and person knowledge. So you're like, there's no way they don't play this card right here. And so I'm going to prep. Normally I would do this, but since I know it's Bob, I'm gonna play this, and I know they're gonna do the thing, so I'm just gonna kill them this way.
I think I don't have that as much now, but in my Hearthstone career, I definitely have had some players like that where I know their style. I know like this is the kind of way they play. This is the kind of cards they run. So yeah, but then once in a while they even surprise you, and then you're like, "What? They never run that card." So that's that can be fun, right? That happen a lot in poker too, where you know there's a difference between a random player, and the most obvious one is this person doesn't play aggro, right? So you mulligan not for aggro, you mulligan for the other deck. That's the easy one, but there can be stylistic choices, but I think the big one is just knowing they never play a certain kind of deck. So
Fair.
So I'm a player who this concept is new to me. I've never thought about, how to value where my attacks go. How do I start getting better at it? What's your advice?
So I think the big thing is try to. I think the big two things is the value of board control, how useful important is board control here, the value of face damage, and I think how likely. I think with face, the big example is if you're trading an 8/8 into a 1/1, that's usually not a good play. There are exceptions, right? But it's usually not a good play because the 1/1 is not that good for board control. And the 8 damage face is a lot. But if you're going face with a 1/1 and there's an 8/1 on board, well, that board control is very valuable, right? Because it's not just the value trade. So try to think about what is the value of board control. And what is the value of the face damage. Those are the two big things. And then afterwards, reflect. Let's say if I went face and I didn't control the board, did I get punished? Did they not have a good punish? Oh, did that went well or that didn't go well? And then, I think also if you do a bunch of board control plays and you're an aggro deck and you don't get there, think what were some spots that maybe if I had gone face, I would have set up a 2-turn lethal, or maybe I could have gotten there. Those are the main things. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more factors, but you don't need to know all that. You just need to start with certain values. And I think the big value is the value of board control and the value of damage to face. And I think board control gets more complicated where it's like, okay, if I control the board really well, I can slap down this card next turn and they unlikely have an answer and that card doesn't get answered. It's really, really powerful. That's a little more advanced. Same thing with face. It might be like, well, if I go face here, then they're going to likely do this and then I can set up a 2-turn lethal the next turn. That's really advanced. Just think about board control, face damage. Those are the big two things.
I think the two most right now in the current meta, I think the two most interesting cards that really are challenging, not that they're challenging cards, but like that the challenge to play against is Blob of Tar, especially in decks that keep bringing it back, and the new Whelp, the 1/4 Poison is Reborn. Because it's like, well, then I have to deal with that. I have to clear it. I have to clear it twice, or do I clear it? Or then how do I play? What do I play? I think those are like some of the really intensive, challenging cards in these concepts.
Yeah. And I love cards like that when I'm especially playing against beginners, because those are the kind of cards that allow me to have a ridiculous win rate because players misplay them. They just ignore something where they shouldn't. And so those kind of tough decisions and tough, like tricky cards, people are more likely to misplay. And there's even sort of theory more in poker, but in Hearthstone, let's say you think you're a better player than your opponent, running decks that might punish opponent for doing bad board control plays might give you a win, even if the pro players would know exactly how to deal with that, and not the deck isn't actually as strong as something else. Certain kinds of decks are going to more punish mistakes. So.
Yeah, Blobatar is one that kept coming to mind just because it is such an awkward card to try to play around and against. One, because 4 health is a very awkward breakpoint. It always has been, I feel like, in Hearthstone. 3 is a very common breakpoint. 4 is really difficult to deal with because then if you're trying to trade it, you're sending something in that you don't want to send into a poisonous. So it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. But it's not just sending into a poisonous. It's you're sending into a poisonous that then drops a taunt and a poisonous, and then they play the stupid 5/3, and they play the other things, and they keep bringing it back, and it's like, well, how do I? They're just going to bring it back. Why? What am I? Yeah.
I think what's so frustrating is to really. I love those kind of games because those kind of games are continuous board tension, and everyone knows I'm the king of board tension. Everyone talks, so there's a constant, potential energy on the board, and you can't just have this. There's like a few years, 4 years, 5 years back, there's these metas where every turn the opponent would clear everything on their board, and then you clear everything on their turn. And when you have these cards that are continuously on the board, I think it creates a lot of interesting situations, and you have to really understand things. Where you have to, they play that Blavatar, your plan of just winning really fast goes out the window. Like, you got to play a slow win because it's going to take a long time to get through all these blobs of tar. So,
So, you know what? Probably the biggest mistake I've made the entire year, this entire last year, is not playing minions into Metal Detector. Because
oh,
I never really, I never really kind of value they're going to get a coin, whatever. I'd rather have them. I'd rather get some pressure on the board, get damage, whatever. But like, sometimes the right play is to just, not even if you're a paladin, not even hero power, just pass the turn or figure out some way to you
as like an
or something.
as an aggro
I mean,
deck,
I don't know.
or like as what kind of deck?
I don't know. Let's even just say aggro. Like if they're gonna have the metal detector and you drop a 1/1, they're just gonna swing into it, get the coin. Was that still the right play?
Well, are you just gonna just never develop pressure? You just wait around that metal detector forever?
No, but if I don't have a turn 2 play and my play is play the 1/1, is that the right play? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm saying that those are hard decisions.
Yeah.
And I know I always play into it and then I lose. So it's like, well, am I making the right decisions?
That might be a thing of you understand that they got a coin there, but you might have done something else, or so, but you're fixating on that, because usually as an aggro you won't play around something like metal detector if you're playing that bubble paladin where you play the 4-drop. But maybe I'll give you a situation. Let's say you're on coin, you played a 1-drop on one, and then they somehow, or they went metal detector, whatever, and you have the opportunity. Don't worry about the math on this, right? And then you have the opportunity to wait hero power, because then next turn you get to go coin and play that 4/1, right? And that 4/1 you don't mind if it gets metal detector because you get a 7/7. That might be a weird situation where that's right, and then maybe you do that to deny them coin so they can't go coin dubious purchase. This is what we call fancy play syndrome. It's probably not right. It's probably right just to hero power and let them have the coin. But there are situations where those kind of plays are right. And those plays are really fun because you look brilliant when you pull it off, but often it's incorrect, right? So players will sometimes try and do those kind of plays because you look, oh, he did it hero power. Why did he do that? Like, that's really interesting, but most of the time they're incorrect. So,
and half the time you're wrong. I had a play, and I've talked about this on the show, where I was playing. I think it might have been even theory crafting, but it might have been something else. Where I was playing against. I was playing Quest Demon Hunter, and I had played Incendius, and I made the play where I played the Taurus that does damage, reflects damage, and they had a full hand, or close to a full hand. So I played the card that draws 3 for a paraglide. And so I drew, or I had them, we had the explosions draw. I think maybe they had played the Incendius, but the Incendius draw. So I took the damage from Incendius and it reflected back
yeah.
to them. And I'm like, it's on my turn or whatever. So I thought I was going to get the 2 damage to trick my quests because it was going damage to them. It was 2 damage. It was on my turn, but it didn't work that way on the reflecting.
Okay.
And I was so mad because I thought I had this big 5-head play
Yeah.
where I was like, oh my God, like this is going to be like the clip. And it just didn't work out. But it's trying to find those plays. They're fun, but they're not really ways to sustain solid winning.
I mean, the boring answer is, if you want to win today, you don't do those plays. If you want to win tomorrow, go for it, right? So,
yeah, I definitely think taking some of those chances is important, because once you set up kind of whatever your decision baseline is, you've got, okay, this is the level that I understand this concept at. This is when I go face. This is when I trade. But then you've got to find those times where the rules need to be broken. And that comes through reflecting. I did this. I traded. I didn't have enough damage when I could have this turn. Next time, I'm going to go face. Or the next 5 times I'm in this spot, I'm going to go face and see what happens. And then you get to be able to see, I did this and it worked more often, or I did this differently and it didn't work because I didn't think about this. And being able to just, find those data points like you've talked about is important. And, you can also get those data points by watching other people, by watching streams and watching, different things. So where then, one, you get to kind of see what other people are doing, especially if they're a streamer who explains their plays a lot. You don't always pick up on all of the thought process, and you don't always store that information, I feel like, as well, unless you're really focused on learning that, because you definitely learn most by making the mistake yourself, because you don't forget that mistake. But if you're looking for data, you can look for other sources, and now you have more things to base your next decisions off of, and know, okay, this is what I thought was right. Now I'm going to do this in this situation because now I know for this. I feel like this comes up a lot with when you have those cards that have an aura or like a spell burst minion, where you can't activate the spell burst this turn, but you don't think your opponent can clear it. Do you tempo it? Do you not? Those are really, really interesting decision points, to where, there was plenty of times when Oracle was in a lot of decks to where you had the decision of, do I just throw this out on turn, what was it, a 3 mana card before it got nerfed to 4? Do I throw this out on 3 because I don't think that they can deal with it, and then I can activate the spell burst next turn? Or there's a lot of spell burst cards like that.
I think you two have to play the hard decks, right? Like, play is really, I do as I say, not as I do. It's really hard to see your rank drop, but like, if you're never going to be good at playing against or with these decks if you don't play Garrote Rogue, if you don't play Discover Hunter, if you don't play whatever, right?
I don't think you need to jump into those. If you're overwhelmed because you're just doing too many things, there's nothing. My first number 1 legend was with Even Paladin. You went hero power on 1 every single turn. Sometimes you coin a 2-drop, but if you're going first, the play on turn 1 was always hero power. You never had to mess up turn 1, and having that simple thing helped me get like a lot of these core concepts down. Now I'm playing decks that have a lot more going on, but there's something to be said of just playing a simple deck. You don't need to go play Garrote Rogue as your first deck, right? Go just play.
I'm not saying your first deck. I'm just saying don't be afraid to play them.
Yeah, I'm challenging that of like, if you're a beginner player, you're probably better off playing something that is a little simpler, and then moving your way up to that as you get better. So you don't need to do the hard deck right away, So
no, absolutely play your Quest Paladin for now, and we'll all hate you. But then figure something else out. Then move on to Protoss Priest, and we'll all hate you. And then move on to something a little harder.
Yeah,
I'm not biased.
I definitely learned a lot of it through the more I played Arena. I feel like Arena, especially with it being a lower synergy format, to where you're looking at the minions more standalone. Typically, it's a little bit different now with how they had the buckets and the redraft and everything else, but especially older Arena, to where you couldn't guarantee that any of your cards were going to work together on a given draft, and then you're really evaluating, the cards at face value of what you have on the board versus what they have on the board, and really continuing that board control. And then also for me, playing other games, playing Lorcana has really changed how I think about controlling the board, especially because of different effects and different types of cards in that game.
And what you just said about hitting Legend first with Even Paladin, it's like, so that I learned lessons from my first Legend, which was Dragon Hunter, Rottenness Drake, Tempo. I kill one of your things, I'm developing at the same time. Huge, right? And that was such a good card, and it was such a good swing play, and learning how to get those swing plays made such a difference.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on the topic?
Buy the book.
The book will let you understand the deep theory, so you don't have to
Yes.
have me list out all the reasons. You start figuring out all these concepts yourself, and then you can create your own mental models around it. That's what a lot of the book is about, and it's not necessarily to Hearthstone. I think these things are applicable to everything.
Yep.
But that's what the book is about. So because how do I know whether to go face or trade? I don't have anyone to tell me, right? I don't have any. So this is the right answer. How do pros know? They've broken it down individual values and they played with the values themselves. And even what's fun about talking to pros is pros will massively disagree on whether you trade or go face. So like they'll be in a spot and we'll be like, no, we always go face here. And it's like, no, you always trade here. You're an idiot. Like, and they're both like top 10 legend, right? So I think that the point is, the stuff is an imperfect art. We don't have stockfish for Hearthstone, so we can't just put it in and say, oh, the computer says go face. So, figuring it out and creating your own models and how you see the game and then being able to value yourself. I think we go face here, or I think we trade here. So.
And if you read the book, you can go into his chat and then you can argue with him about it. And you just make sure you read it first so you understand.
Yeah.
You have that knowledge. Be like, hey, No Hands, you said to like think about it like this, but you just did this. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Like,
page 58 says in the book, you don't seem to be doing that, right? That's what I do to my mom when I get in a fight with her. I remember something she said to me, and turn it back on her. It's real bad,
Oh, it's great. So, question for you to wrap things up: what's your favorite style of dancing?
Oh, these days salsa. So
Very nice, very nice. Salsa is a lot
but
of fun.
I do a lot of things, so not just that one.
So salsa is more like the mid range to like merengue being kind of like your aggro.
Well, merengue it's just left, right, left, right. It's so easy, If people say, I don't know merengue, it's like, yes, you do. You know how to walk, right? That's all. Maybe your
Right.
hips don't move. You don't need to do hips. Just keep doing left, right, and then do some turn. It's the easiest dance ever. So
And then we get into like your Argentine tango later. But anyway, if you'd like to support the show, you can do so by joining us over at patreon.com/breadandbutterhs. You get access to the raw audio early. You get access to a members channel on Discord where all our previous guests exist. You can help shape the show with future questions for future guests, which you'll know in advance. If you'd like to help us in a non-financial way, you just let people know about the show, let us know how we're doing. You can also leave us a 5-star review. It really helps other people find the show. And we are now streaming most nights on Sunday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at Bread and Butter HS on YouTube. So we'd love to see you there. No Hands, how can people find you on social media?
I'm on Twitter. I believe is a Twitter slot. Let me see. Or now it's X. My bad. X.com
No,
slash.
we call it Twitter here.
Okay.
It's Twitter.
Twitter.com/NoHandsGamer. Then there's Twitch.tv/NoHandsGamer. And the YouTube one, I don't think I have a NoHandsGamer. You can just type NoHandsGamer into the search. Those are the big places I'm at. And I'm already on Amazon. So it was supposed to be on December 10th. We submitted it and it was faster. So you can buy the book today. There's links in my YouTube videos and my stream, but you can also just type The Art of Getting Good. It shows up for me, but it might not show up easily for you because it's like my algorithm knows it's me, and it's got 2 reviews so far. So you can go check it out there. So that's where I'm at. So
Other reviews, your mom and your dad.
no, it's viewers. I think I feel like they wouldn't give me a 5-star. They'd be like, good attempt. All right, proud of you, son. 3 stars.
I also like the video that you have with like the concentric circles going in the background, like the hypnotic thing. This is great. You need the book. Pylet, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me Pylet712. That's Pylat on both Twitter and Blue Sky, and then as well on Discord in the Bread and Butter Discord, and then a couple other Hearthstone related ones as well.
And you can find me on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok at titosantanahs. You can also follow me on Blue Sky, but I don't check that nearly enough. And you can find the show at breadandbutterhs and most other places. No hands. This might seem like a silly question, but do you have anything you'd like to promote this week?
You just said it. Buy the book. It'll change your life. You're going to get legend, all right? So,
And if you're already legend, you'll get top legend.
yeah.
Pylet, you got anything you'd like to promote or shout out this week?
Gonna shout out L-Bomb, who I played in THL. Really close, really fun series. Played against them a couple times before, and always a good match and good to kind of chat with them before and afterwards. And then also a huge shout out, obviously, to NoHands for being on and letting us help promote the book, and also giving us a chance to read it beforehand. Definitely can echo everything that he is saying about it, about how it transfers outside of Hearthstone is something that I'm looking forward to. One, adding an actual copy to my bookshelf, and then using some of the concepts with my students, like I do for it's a lot of the kind of thinking and process of learning that I use a lot with my students, and look forward to having another tool for that.
So you teach like 5 different classes. So if you buy a book, you have them buy the book in each class. That's like 125 copies per thing. That's winning, right?
That there are, but I was thinking of that. There was one quote that I was getting to in the book, and I'm like, I don't think I can say this quote at school without getting myself in trouble. So I might not be able to do that.
Yeah.
I actually think I know which quote you're talking about. Yeah, and I don't really have much to shout out this week. I just thank you, No Hands, for being on. We love having like the really smart, intelligent people from the YouTube community. I think we learn a lot, and it was great to read the book. I will read it again and try to wrap my head around some of the concepts. And a lot of, believe it or not, if you're reading the book, it's a lot of stuff you should know. It's like you're gonna read this, you're like, yep, that makes sense. Yeah, I know that. That makes sense. Makes sense. But it's like framing it and putting it into words and a picture and a kind of just a direction is taking things and helping you. So like I don't think there was a lot of earth shattering things in there, but I think it was a way to frame everything to make it so that way you can get better. And but yeah, anyway, guys, I think we're toast. We'll see you.
See ya.
All right. No Hands, sorry to keep you so long. That was a long episode.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. It's 2 hours. That's what I expected. So.
Yep. And the thank you very much. And if you're new to please give a follow to the channel. If you're new here, it helps us to grow a little bit. We're a new Twitch channel, and that really helps us find new people. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. And I'm gonna send you guys over. We'll send you guys to Schmoopy, who is a fantastic wild streamer, and he'll be on the show in a couple weeks with the entire crew from Born to Be Wild. I got there.
I was trying to find the quote that I was referencing.
Okay.
I know it has something to do with like, hey, maybe she's not going to date you because she's a lesbian.
No, it wasn't that one. I did get a good laugh out of that one. No, it was the life's not worth it to go through half-assing everything. Choose something and put your full ass into it.
That's at the end. Yeah. So, so that's I don't think those are but it's interesting what quotes.
Can you say that again, Violet? I was doing the raid, so I only heard what Schmoopy was saying. What was the quote?
Choose life's not worth it to go through half-assing everything. Choose something and put your full ass into it.
Oh, that's not bad. I think the lesbian thing was worse.
Yeah, so I think, but I don't know. Maybe you just can't use the word ass in school.
Yeah, so. I would not be able to get away with swearing.
Yeah. So
I thought it was more like maybe she doesn't like you because you're short. Maybe she doesn't like you because she's a lesbian. Who knows? It
was the gambler where things go wrong and they have all the excuses.
Oh yeah.
That girl is a lesbian is usually like it's an excuse people use instead of taking responsibility, right? So that's
say no, you're just ugly.
So
it's fine.
That happens so much in band. I can't count the number of times where somebody plays something wrong, and I do it as a trumpet player. The first thing I do, I fiddle with my valves and be like, oh, that valve must be sticking, or my reed's not in the right spot on the clarinet, or whatever it is, and it's just instinct.
Now there are times when I lose a Hearthstone game because I drag the wrong card out, and not like I'm like I should play this card, and I like okay, and I drag like wait shit, why did I play the aura? Shit, I'm like mad because I knew I did the right play, and then what frustrates Pylet the most when he watches me is when I go into a game, I say okay, here's what I'm playing, here's what I'm playing, here's my game plan, and then on like turn 3 I don't follow the game plan. He's like, you had the game plan.
Yeah.
With no reason to
That's right.
deviate.
Yeah, I
No
think
reason to
if
deviate.
if you're playing tempo decks, if you just spend your mana in an efficient manner and develop stats that take like the obvious value trades,
Yeah.
because you can overvalue trade. You don't have to get this, and then you eventually just overwhelm this. And I'd have students that they learn this, and then all of a sudden they just win at a 90% win rate for like a week until their MMR adjusted, because just so many players just can't handle that, right? You just playing stuff. They maybe do one board clear, and then you play more stuff, and then they fold. So it's just that's the most important skill, and you don't need to know your opponent's like fancy tech card.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.